when you get a chance to sit down and listen to two guys like Ed Dodds, the assistant GM for the Colts, and Morocco Brown, the chief personnel executive for the Colts, you take that opportunity and you learn something. You don't spend a bunch of time talking, you spend a bunch of time listening, because when you're listening, you're learning. These guys, they teach us something. I think they teach Chris Ballard things. I think one of the reasons why these guys keep passing on other jobs is because they enjoy learning from Chris Ballard, and they enjoy the fact that they're heard as members of this front office team. The first question we asked Ed Dodds and Morocco Brown is what they saw in Matt Ryan as a veteran quarterback. Did they think he could play? What got them excited about Matt Ryan in the first place?
I just think when you watch someone like him, just the experience he has, and there's so much that goes on before the ball's snapped. And that's what, with everything Frank does and Marcus is doing, I mean, that's so important. And we knew he was going to be able to do that. And you saw the success we had with Phillip, right? Like, okay, they're longer in a tooth, maybe not as strong arms as it used to be, but you watch the games and you can tell the guy knew where to go with it, when not to let it go, when to get out of a bad play. And, I mean, it's just that stuff's so important. When you're just sitting, at home watching a game or even in the stands, you don't see all that. Just all the little minutia that goes into it before when they're in a huddle to the line of scrimmage. So.
Quick little story. We were in April draft meetings. We get there early, get started early. So it's 6 a.m. and he's in his locker with a sweat already. I'm like, okay, first guy I see here.
6 a.m.
So I just go over and introduce myself, and there's nobody he won't speak to, befriend, that kind of thing, which is good. But I said, why such an early start? Like, what's on your agenda for today? He's like, man, when you've been doing this for 14 years, it's just a part of your DNA. It's part of your routine. So I want to be the first guy in, last guy out, and going to get some work in now. I'm like, man. So I thought, just from that standpoint, just the commitment and understanding what it takes for that position to be the leader, and he's done it for so long. That was impressive to meet him that way.
Wow. Similarly for both of you, Chris Ballard always talks about how it's about finding the right free agents or the right outside acquisitions to elevate a team. This defense didn't need a lot, but going out to get Yannick Ngakoue, Stephon Gilmore were kind of big moves. What did you guys see in those two that kind of made them the right specific fits to add to a defense that was already pretty good?
You guys wrote about it plenty, right? We needed some speed off the edge. We needed more pass rush. I mean, we knew that. Yannick's got a history of production, coming after the quarterback. Gus had a lot of familiarity with him, obviously. Spent a year with him. We played him twice a year before Jacksonville, so I think it's just with those guys. I mean, he has a proven track record of production. Then you just spend time with him. Use your sources. You call around. And I think you just get to a point where you're comfortable with it. And same with Stephon. I mean, we just spent time with him. I mean, he came in for a visit. We didn't sign him right away. He left. So we just spent enough time with him, and you just get comfortable with these guys.
How have both of your roles changed over your time here in Indianapolis?
I would say I don't think mine's changed too much. I think I've just over time, when you come in and you're implementing new systems and processes, you're going to be a lot more hands-on early, and then you can't micromanage people. You teach them and you get out of the way. And early on, I'd say there's a lot more course correction, right? You got to jump in a little bit more. And now it's really cool to watch. You just sit back and everybody knows what they're doing, and they're doing it well. And then they also come to you with ways to improve what you've started. Like, hey, what if we did this and this? And you say, yeah, it's a great idea. Let's roll with it.
You got a new role this year as well. So, how would you sum up what your role is now?
Well, first of all, I'm excited about the role, and I don't take it for granted. You're being elevated within the organization. So more given, more required. But really, it's we'll just be seeing more of him in the office.
Sorry.
Yeah, that'll be the first thing. Just being closer to the team. When you're the college director, the way that we scout, you're on the road for like 6 months out of the year. So you can kind of get away from what's going on with the team in the office. So it'll mainly be that, just being closer to the fire and just trying to continue Ed and Chris helping us build the team the way that we build it. So that, and maybe a little bit more pro personnel work. In my first 14 years in the league, I was in the office doing pro, so it shouldn't be too difficult. It'd be like learning to ride a bike again.
Right.
So.
What point during you're watching practices, whether it's OTAs when you got or now, what are you looking for? The reinforcement that you got the right player, or concerns that maybe you didn't? What do you look for?
Right now, we're studying movement. Like part of our job, that's really what it is. Studying how guys move. So right now they just have helmets on. Now once we start hitting, then it's a different ball game. Then some of the guys that flash will disappear, and some of the guys you didn't see athletically will pop up on the scene.
You've seen that before. That when
every year there's a guy that you wouldn't even want on the team that's going to start making plays, and you have to consider him. But I think the difference that separates it is when you put the pads and contact comes into it, because it's like NASCAR on cleats. It's full speed, and everybody may not perform the same way when it's not just contact but collisions on the field.
And just asked Gilmore when he was up here. I mean, I think the last full healthy season he had, he won Defensive Player of the Year. I know a long time has passed, but I mean, you have to project a little bit, maybe when a guy is playing, in a season where he was hurt, but he seems healthy. Can he get back to that? Did you see traits that show you he can get back to that?
The guy knows how to play. He knows how to cover. We got to keep watching him. Father times undefeated. So is he going to look like he looked 3 years ago?
Right.
I don't know that, but we saw enough of him in Carolina. And they rotated. They had a group of guys, and they were taking care of him. And he had the knee that was ended up scoped. That they scoped. There was more going on with it than I think anyone knew last year. So he's in a much better place, and he didn't play bad for them. He just didn't play a lot, and I think that's just the health stuff going on. But the biggest thing is we've had success with those guys like Xavier. He's just knowing how to play. I mean, it sounds simple enough, but those guys have been doing it a long time. It makes a difference.
I was just going to ask you, Rock, I mean, a guy like that, it seems like he has that competition mindset. Playing that position, schemes he's played in, you got to go after guys and challenge guys. Does that do something for you when you bring that in the building?
Yeah, well, it's kind of been there, done that. And haven't played on that high level. And to what Ed just said, even if you're not quite there anymore, it's something to be said for seeing it before, because you're out ahead of the play. Like you kind of know what's coming. So that, and also that just brings leadership into the room, in the meeting room. Like you're trying to set a standard within your position group. So he definitely knows what it takes to win, and I think that's something you factor into.
You guys have both been through the interview process for other general manager jobs a lot the last couple of years. Do you take something, like what do you learn when you're in those, beyond just the interview process? Do you learn something about how organizations work that you can use for your jobs here, or?
I think you probably learn just from preparing for it. You get a sense for how people may build differently or do things differently, but just from an interview process, I don't think you're there long enough to really figure out how they do things. Maybe if it gets deeper into it, but you're digging a lot behind the scenes, maybe. But I think just going through the exercise preparing for it is you learn a lot about how different organizations do things, at least from the outside.
I think really when you reflect and look back at the interview process, you learn more about yourself because you get feedback. you hear how it went, their thoughts, and then there's some things you always want to sharpen or say, hey, maybe what do I really want to do if I'm in this role? How would I approach this, approach that? But they really want to get to know who you are as a person. They don't know you. So more importantly than anything, what kind of person, your background, how'd you get to where you are. If you're going to spend 365 with somebody, you want to get to know who they are first. I don't think anybody would be in the interview cycle if they weren't good at what they do. It's kind of just let you know you have your chops in scouting or whatever, but it's about the fit. And then when it's the right time, if it happens, it happens.
For Morocco, I want to ask you about Bernard Raymond. He's just such an interesting prospect given his backstory and how late he came to football. And once you decide you like a player like that, you want to bring him in. How much have you thought about or project forward as to like what's the ideal trajectory for a guy like that who is kind of new to the position and is kind of learning? Whether it's trying to start on day one at left tackle or creating sort of a progression. How much was that part of the process?
Yeah, well, some of the trajectory, obviously we're looking at the talent piece of it, but it's where you are at that position. And like I said, we feel good about Matt Pryor, but you always want to add competition, and then you just say, okay, who does the guy remind us of? Does he have it within him to overcome? And then from there, you bet on the traits you saw, you bet on the person, the character, and then you put him out here and just see where it goes that way. So he's a guy that hadn't played long, made great strides, starting out at tight end initially. And so he reminded us, there's some things you guys will see look like Braden when he came out. Like, guy's an athlete, big barrel-chested guy, strong. So we'll bet on that every time, and we feel good about the athlete he is. We really value that here at every position.
And with Braden, I'm guessing did that teach us something about maybe the arm length and maybe not overthinking that part of it for a tackle?
Correct, you got it.
Can your evaluation of a player change based on a change in position, coach? Like with the receivers coach, with Reggie, or with Ron being the secondary coach? Can they bring out different things that you guys notice in veterans?
I think physically, probably not a lot, right? But can one coach just gel better with a player than another coach could? Yeah. I mean, maybe you just don't start with the end in mind. You just keep evaluating it each year. You're not going to just try to start with a clean slate. And obviously, you're going to have thoughts of what you had previously on that player, but just try to start over. Just don't start with the end in mind.
Ed, you kind of addressed this earlier with, you guys have been here for a while, you've got your systems in place. How does that change now that the systems are in place, where you guys want this team to be here, or how, like, the moves you make? Probably not asking the question very well, but how does having that established thing change the way things are operating for you guys now as opposed to the first couple of years?
We want to be a consistent championship caliber football team. I don't know the answer you're looking for.
I don't know either.
At least you're honest.
No, I think we just continually, just like the team does, just like Frank and his staff do with the players. I mean, we just continually, each year. I mean, we do it every year after the draft. I mean, I get these. We get everybody in the office, and we're like, all right, let's go through everything. Are we keeping this process? Do we need to tweak it? Are we getting rid of it? Are we adding to it? And I mean, we do that after like every major muscle movement. I'll say, like, combine, all-star, draft process. I mean, we just sit down. What do we like? What do we not like? What would we change? And you just got to keep doing that. You just don't. Just don't sit there and act like you have all the answers. Just keep trying to get better.
A couple more here.
Scouting for this defense, Gus Bradley, is it more your wheelhouse from your time in Seattle? Are you more comfortable, I guess, with that scheme?
I'm familiar with it. Flus and his staff did a great job of communicating what they wanted. I wouldn't say it's like more my wheelhouse or anything. It's just you're just familiar with it. But now Gus has evolved. I mean, that was over 10 years ago when we were together. So was a long time. He's changed and done some different things now.
Rocco's going to ask with Pierce specifically, but just receivers in general, when you're making that projection from college to this game, what's the hardest part of that projection at that position?
Getting all verse press.
Yeah.
Because you don't see it a lot in college.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have the caliber corners you'll face, not even week to week, but here in training camp. So you might in college face one real guy, maybe two during the course of the year. Here you're going to see it every week. So you really have to have a plan to say, okay, how am I going to even get off the line when I'm facing bump and run man-to-man? I think
So
that's something he's working, every receiver, not just him.
So how can you kind of project whether a guy can be good at it? I mean, it's a little guesswork, I know, but I mean, are there things you can look for that tell you this guy might have it in him?
Well, with the technology as it is, we can go back and filter the 3-4 years he's been there and pull up the plays he's in first face and press.
Yeah.
And talk to the guy and find out how do you see yourself, what are your strengths, weaknesses, but that's why we have coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So they're here to make those guys better, and that's what I'd say. Probably most difficult to start with.
I'm gonna ask
last one here.
I'm gonna ask one more bad question, but I don't know how to word it.
We'll start off like
Is
that.
it-
Be more confident.
This is going to be a great answer.
Is
Give
it
you a
tough
bad
to
answer.
stay patient? Is it tough to stay patient when you're interviewing for these big jobs, either deciding it's not a good fit or they go somewhere else? Is it tough for either of you with the big job kind of right there in front of you? You start your interviewing for them now.
I mean, for myself, no, because I've been around some pretty patient people. I mean, Chris is very patient in how he makes decisions. Is going to analyze everything to the fullest. You just don't rush into stuff. John Schneider was the same way, and John was with Ted Thompson, and I remember it always cracked me up. So John was in the office. Ted liked to go on the road a lot, so Ted was on the road, and they had a player that I think a practice squad player, another team was trying to take off of their practice squad signed to the roster. John's like calling Ted and he won't answer. He finally gets hold of him. He's like, Ted, what are we doing? What do we do with this guy? And what are we gonna do? What do you want to do? Ted said, you know what we're gonna do, John? We're gonna do what I do best. I'm gonna do anything. So you just be patient. I mean, when you rush in, you're not going to make a good decision. So just look at everything, sit back, evaluate it. I mean, everybody. It's just like players in negotiations, right? With agents. I mean, they're always going to try to create a sense of urgency. It's not. Move on.
Morocco, from your standpoint.
Yeah, when you first start getting interviews, you're excited. Say you press, but we work in this industry to potentially get those jobs, to see how good you could be at the highest level in our industry. But just like they're interviewing us, I kind of go into it where I'm interviewing them. I want to see how do they answer some of the questions I have. How do they see the game? Does it match up with the way I see it? And do those things integrate together? Could we work together? So. As he said, you can't force it. What's for you is for you. Nobody can take what God has for you. And then it helps to be patient when you're here working with people like Chris and like Ed. Like, this is the best staff I've ever worked with 22 years. So you don't have to rush it. And I guess when somebody wants you, it's your time, that'll happen. But it helps to be somewhere here where you enjoy it, you're working with good people, and you don't have to start looking outside trying to see when you're going to get interviewed and stuff like that. When it happens, it happens.
That's Ed Dodds and Morocco Brown talking football and how they put together a roster and how they manage their own careers. Could anything be more interesting than that? Was that not 19 minutes well spent by you to try to figure out what this team's going to be and develop a bit of an understanding what these guys do? They peeled back the curtain in a really interesting way. I enjoy this every year, and I thought I'd just share the whole thing with you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something.